Hello there. My name is Sabrina Fisher, I'm a writer, and this is Thrown at the Wall, the series of videos where I expose my ideas that did not make the cut. But maybe you can get inspiration out of it. So sit back and watch me get things done while I tell you about the abandoned projects in a file titled Shit Thrown at the Wall. Today's gem in the garbage does not have a working title. It is based on a set of fictitious anthropology notes I wrote to build a world around a character. When time came to write the short story, I got 3 paragraphs in and gave up. After doing all that world building, my creative juices ran dry. The setting was in a Roman antiquity-inspired fantasy world with a heavy-handed use of Latin terms. The notes are meant to be written by a scholar and translator named Blasius. Blasius has been ordered by his dominus to learn the language of the senator's new friend. She is an escapee from the gladiator fighting pits who shares the senator's love for good food. Only she doesn't speak their language and uses her hands to communicate. During the drafting of the notes, I was taking an Intro to Latin course at university. Now, if you ask me to translate or read anything in Latin, it's one hell of a struggle. Anyhow, here's a summary of the events that led Blasius to meet the strange woman called Ailu. This is straight from the notes. From more exchanges, I was able to register a lot of information about the so-called Dark Continent she originates from. She claimed having crossed the Great Western Sea with the help of a dragon. According to her, those ancient beings often nest near her village, and such travels are not unheard of. The purpose of her voyage had 2 parts. First was to find new and delectable foods to feast on. Second, to find a worthy mate. These notes will be on the latter. This is the note's introduction to the Spider Woman's rituals around motherhood. About the name given to their species by the author of the notes. It is Araneae femina. Araneae was meant to be in the descriptive genitive and femina the nominative as the subject. In other English words, women of the spider or spider woman. I had to do some research because I forgot the declension I used to make up this fictitious Latin term. The notes explain the origins of Araneae femina, their social expectations around parenthood, how they used alchemy as a means of contraception, in their courtships, and in their mating rituals. The short story was going to be focused on the mating rituals, of course, skimming over courtships and the others. The male lead and narrator of the short story was meant to be the star of the gladiator stadium, Balduc, of his chosen stage name, who was the son of an Eastern merchant's daughter from that world's equivalent of Eastern Asia, and a southern artisan from the fictitious stand-in for sub-Saharan Africa. The female lead was Ailu, a spider woman from a divine descent and coming from a continent that the people of the story don't know very much about. She bears a white skull on the brown skin of her back. It is a birthmark distinguishing her family lineage. Ailu courted Balduc in a series of gifts and tests. Once they had both consented to parenthood, time came for the conception. See where I was going? It should have been easy. Just another piece of monster erotica. Everything was prepared. All I had to do is write it. But I couldn't. And it has been years. Here I will read to you the 3 paragraphs I have of the opening scene. She had been digging for months. Her burrow had an entrance below the villa. It was wide enough for me to spread my arms out to the sides. Ailu was big enough to eat me. When she warned me she would look different, I thought she meant doing her hair differently. Not that she would come out under the guise of a spider. If it wasn't from the white skull on her back, I would not have known it was her. Her 8 black eyes sunk into mine. Ailu was still as beautiful and colorful as ever, if only with more legs and fangs. Part of me feared All those feasts had served to fatten me up. She turned her back to me, and despite all my fears, I entered as I had promised. There was no sunlight on the ground. Silken lamps hung around with a bluish light. There were no flames. It reminded me of fireflies. Ailu's burrow was very clean. Her silk protected us from any hint of dirt. She left me alone in a room that I would call my home for the next 20 days. Although I could swear it was months, Blasius assured me he counted the days. There were cushions everywhere, and the whole floor felt like a steady hammock, but bouncier. The temperature was pleasant. I would have fallen asleep if I was not so nervous. When she came back, she seemed human, as it was the Ailu I was used to, only devoid of any clothing. Good start, right? Only I know way too much about those characters and that world. There are no surprises, and coming up with an outline for the story would only make things even more boring to write. And adding all the scenes preceding that moment would make it so long and only push back what I couldn't avoid. Since I had already summarized these scenes in the anthropological notes, it was already out of my system. The only thing I can think to do at this point is sharing the notes with my longtime readers. But writing platforms like Wattpad, Inkit, and Tumblr are not the best to format a scientific paper. In the end, I have decided to put the PDF on my Patreon with free public access and call it a day. If someone likes my stuff enough to go there, they most likely would be interested in it. One thing is for sure, I'm not touching that again. With the 30 plus stories I'm writing simultaneously, I have to give up on some of them if I want to finish the others. I had better stories to write, so I'll let go of that one. If you want to read those that have made the cut, check the links below. This was Thrown at the Wall, and I'm Sabrina Fisher, wishing you good luck in your endeavors. Thank you for watching.